Hello everyone. I'm here to do a presentation regarding the organizational behavior theories and concepts. So this is HRM552. My name is Netmiya Sara Vijay Surya, and let's move on to the first slide. So the first question here is about most organizations have been impacted by COVID-19. Analyze how this disruption impacted employer-employee relationship with two examples from your workplace. So the performance has not been measured appropriately due to the massive amount of pressure built between employees and employers. So the resource restriction and limitations that has been created from the pandemic to shift from a normal office work environment to a home work environment has led to increased unrealistic work expectations and demands by reducing the employee morale. So this situation has been greatly influenced by the managers not being proactive like how they used to be before the pandemic. So managers are no longer conducting daily check-ins with employees to see whether what are the expectations of the employees or are the employees on the right track or not, in order to provide the employees with a much more realistic and flexible work schedule. So because of that, in addition to these work pressure that has been already built within employees, now the employees have to deal with home pressure to ensure the requirements and responsibilities have been properly met and fulfilled to their families. So the performance pressure has evolved between the employer-employee, disrupting the morale of the employees with unsatisfactory performance goals for the managers. Let's move on to the next one. So the pandemic has turned the employer-employee relationship to get slowly deteriorated. So that this relationship, once they have had been changed into a more isolated relationship because of the pandemic. So effective communication has also been disrupted because of this issue. So they no longer can conduct face-to-face discussions or meetings as a part of daily and weekly requirements for the organization. So the disrupted face-to-face communication has affected the regular feedback for employees for assignments from managers, affecting the nature of the relationship between employee and employer. So another reason for this can also be talked in here, as in shifting from a natural office work environment to a work from home environment has also created trust issues between employees and employers. So since employees and employers are restricted to communicating via a virtual platform, the transparency between these two parties, employer and employee, has been lost. So this has led the employees to feel uncomfortable and unsecured during their work from home situation. So leaders require emotional intelligence to manage employee experiences during a crisis like COVID-19, where leaders must actively listen to their employees without any judgments and be transparent enough to build an employee-employer trust, which is essential to get through a crisis like COVID-19. Because this is a situation, this is a condition where equally has been impacted emotionally. And this is a very sensitive time period where this contribution of the employer and employee must be very much satisfactory in order to build this trust between these two parties. So let's move on to our second question. So our second question in this presentation is, do you find COVID-19 impacting 5 types of personalities differently? Explain with examples. So let's see how we have provided our solution in this presentation. So COVID-19 pandemic is impacting people's lives in many different ways in terms of how they lived their lives previously before the pandemic and the things they had to experience from the outer environment. So similarly, this has been affecting differently on the well-being of different personality traits as well. So for an example, restrictions such as social distancing and continuous lockdowns during the pandemic have influenced people's life differently. As good example here can be provided as considering the personality type such as extroverts. So articles have discussed that extroverts have struggled so much. For an instance, their usual social engagements and interactions have been disrupted due to this scenario. So if we consider the same concept in the other way around, for introverts, this scenario can be completely different for them. Because for introverts, they are usually very self-isolated. They are kind of people who are trying to keep things within themselves without much socialization. So for a fact, this whole situation, the lockdowns and the social distancing aspects in this pandemic has not been impacted or affected directly for introverts in this case, because they are usually people who are like to, stay and keep things within themselves. But for extroverts, their scenario has been impacted greatly for them. Our next example is like people's well-being could be affected positively or either negatively based on, as I just mentioned, on their distinctive personality traits. So people who are open to new experiences are very creative and intellectually curious about newfound things in the environment. But people with this personality trait may have embraced the continuous restrictions from the pandemic differently. So for an example, in comparison, some may have positively taken this situation to be more creative, to invent and come up with new ideas and ways of doing things that after the past, while some may have taken this whole situation negatively, thinking that it has actually limited their creativity and exploring habits. Because people who are like, open to new experiences are more like to, experience new things, new ideas, and they are very much curious about new things, newfound things. So this whole pandemic situation might have affected them, as in they creatively think to invent new things, such as new ways of wearing face masks, new technologies, new ways of interacting virtually with our peers, with our relations, with our friends and family. But in other aspect, some of the people who also have this personality trait might think, okay, these continuous lockdowns and these restrictions, social distancing might have limited their, exploring aspects in their personality trait, thinking that, okay, because of these lockdowns, they are no longer being able to, explore much in the outer environment. So this can be affect in either two ways differently for people. So another example could be neuroticism trait, which is about the regulation of emotions. So research findings have shown that people with high neuroticism during the pandemic has resulted from a higher stress level and loneliness. So these people are likely to express their true feelings about an unpleasant situation. Therefore, during such a vulnerable time, people with high neuroticism may probably act normal and stable while avoiding and suppressing such situations, enabling them to emotionally tolerate such uncertain, threatening events from the pandemic. So even though those kind of people look much more stable and much more calm and tolerated in this kind of a situation, in this kind of an uncertain period, still what we can think is that even though they try to act normal, still that could be an effect from them trying to suppress their true feelings, suppress their stress levels, because they are actually in their higher stress levels and might be lonely in their own space. So they're trying to act normal, try to tolerate their emotion, their true emotions, acting normal, trying to act normal. So that is the type of people who does possess a personality trait like neuroticism. Also, traits like consciousness found to be more diligent and careful about certain situations. Their consciousness makes them implied and obligated to do things very well, because those are the people who are very much organized and trying to do things in the right way. So it was found that they are more adaptable to new circumstances and changes, like wearing face masks and being responsible for such changes and complying with social norms. So those kind of people tend to be a little bit, stable and again calm, because those people try to, obey and being implied and obligated to do things in the right way. So that will end our presentation, and this slide shows the references that have been used for the question number 1. And these are the 3 references that are used to answer question number 2. And that just conclude our presentation. Thank you everyone for listening my presentation regarding the organizational behavior and some of its theories.